I'm really excited to tell you all about a few things that you can do to customize the way Photoshop looks for you. I normally never have my Photoshop looking like how you've been seeing it throughout these classes. There are a few things that I do to change the appearance of Photoshop, and I'm going to show you how to do the same. The first thing I do is change the interface, and I go to Photoshop Preferences, Interface. And it brings up this dialog box that gives you a few options. For example, you can have it really dark. I like to have it as light as possible. The reason for this is being when I am organizing my layers into color groups, I can see the color groups a lot better with this lighter interface than I could with the darker interface. And I can usually tell the color of my shapes a little bit better too if I'm creating a shape that is, for instance, red. I can see the shape color in this area much better with this lighter interface than I could with the darker interface. It's just a personal preference, and I encourage you to get your own personal preference, and if you like the dark interface, that's absolutely fine. I will switch back to the dark interface for now, just to finish this tutorial. So here we have the dark interface, and let's change a few other things along the way. There are things called workspaces in Photoshop. You can see them here when you click on Window, Workspace. For example, if you are a photographer, you could click on Photography and it will arrange this area over here and your tools to work best for a photographer. For me, I am a designer, so I like to have my own custom one for designers. Alright, so to do that, I like to reset the workspace back to the way it was before. By doing that, I can go to Workspace Essentials, which is the default. So I go to Essentials and then I sort of work off of that. For example, I really like having type and layers. So text and layers are really important to me. So I like having these nice and big. And as I mentioned before, you can pull windows out and you can kind of grab them and rearrange them into an order of your choosing. For example, if I want the history window out too, which I normally do like to have that out, I can pull it out and then double click in this area, or just click these arrows and it will make it larger, okay? And these are all snappy, so they'll all snap to this area, and then you can press arrows and rearrange them accordingly as you like them. If, for example, you don't want brush presets, or there's another window that you don't like, and you'd like to close it at any time, that's absolutely fine. You can go up to this little menu here and do close, and that will get rid of that. I'm going to close this one too because I don't use that either. I do, however, use history, so I want to make this larger. To make it larger, I just need to double click here, which makes it larger. And it's pretty intuitive. You have to kind of figure out a little bit how to do all of these things, but if you just keep double clicking and pressing menus and pulling and dragging, you'll get the hang of it. It's quite easy. So say, for an example, this was the workspace that I like for me, and this is how I want to have my Photoshop always looking all the time. That's okay. I can actually save this workspace and give it a little name. So if I go to Workspace, New Workspace, I can give it a name. I can title it Meg's Workspace and do save. So now in the future, if I end up with the default again, reset essentials, there we go. So I just reset it to the default essentials. Now I can go to Workspace, Meg's Workspace, and look at that. It brings up my workspace just how I like it. Also, it's up here in this corner too. So I can either reset my workspace, say while I'm working, other things pop up or I move things around. At any time I can reset it back to regular Meg's Workspace, or I can go back to the default workspace, which is Essentials. Or I can go to Painting, or Typography, which is great for people who work a lot with type. So this is really how you can customize the way Photoshop works and looks. Going to Preferences, Interface, and looking around here, there are some options within here that I normally don't change, but you could. You can change your screen mode and really create a custom layout this way. You can get rid of the drop shadow that is around the entire Photoshop frame, and you can change the way the full screen view looks as well here. But again, for this class, I think that having it Essentials works really well for a beginner. The last thing that I like to do a lot for customizing Photoshop is changing my rulers from being inches to pixels. In order to do that, you go to Photoshop Preferences and then go to, you can just open General is fine so that we can kind of look around. These are all your preferences, and I would be really careful as to what you change in here because, you could mess something up. So I would just only change things you know what you're dealing with. But for this, I just want to go to units and rulers and change the rulers from inches to pixels. And then also I like to change my type from points to pixels. It's up to you which units you prefer. These are just the ones that I like to use for designing for screens and for the internet and for the web. And then you can also change other things like your resolution and your columns. Okay. That is it for customizing your Photoshop workspace.